Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Thursday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank y'all very much for hanging out today on this combat episode of Couch Potato. We are going to be looking at the Ultimate Fighting Championship as they have a fight night this weekend. Another big fight in the world of boxing, and it's time to rumble in the WWE with the Royal Rumble. Plus, watched AEW Dynamite before coming on here. We need to have a talk. We need to have a chat, because that was dreadful. So we'll get into all of that. I know I had kind of teased a bit of other sportsy things happening, but I just got so into the weeds and the fight stuff. I'm already starting this one way later than I wanted to. And so we're going to push that, kind of kick that sports ball down the road just a little bit there. So this one, all about the fisticuffs, the real and otherwise. But as always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got the Great Calgary Cannons hat right here. We got the Sea of Dead, kind of the old Sea Train logo, or styling anyway, in the background there. So check us out, seaofdead403.ca. That is the place to go for some great Calgary swag and, looking to add some more to the collection, and that gets easier if you guys are buying some stuff, so we'd really appreciate that. As always, we are fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. For those listening and watching, for those listening in podcast form and watching on YouTube, you could have saw this one live over at twitch.tv/primetime PK. Although I don't want to say too much bad about the podcast and YouTube viewers. Just before we get this thing really rolling, slight little brag here. This is this month that we're wrapping up here for the start of 2025. Easily one of the best months that Couch Potato Diary has ever had. When you combine both podcast downloads, which is in the top 5 that I've done, and when you combine that with YouTube views and stuff like that, it has been a phenomenal month, and so I cannot thank everyone enough for the support. And as always, toxic in the chat, first one in, last one to leave, as always. So greatly appreciate all the support from everyone. And so, now that we've done with the little pat, let's get into it. It is now time for some fight talk. We will begin in the Ultimate Fighting Championship as Israel Adesanya fights for relevancy this weekend in Saudi Arabia. The Ultimate Fighting Championship is making history this weekend in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. In the main event, it is Israel Adesanya taking on Nassourdine Imavov in a massive fight in the middleweight division. Plus, you have Shara Bullet back in the octagon as he takes on Michael Venom Page in a very, very important night at 185 pounds. But first off, do want to mention, I should have mentioned this before and didn't, but in the women's flyweight division, it'll be Jasmine Jasduvicius taking on Mayra Bueno Silva in what will be the first UFC women's fight in Saudi Arabia. That there's obviously a lot that goes with that sort of a statement, and there is a lot of it's about time and that sort of a thing, but I do want to commend the UFC for doing that, and congratulations to Jasmine and to Mayra Bueno Silva for being able to put on that sort of an event. And we said that was one of the big fights to watch on this fight card. On the undercard, couple fighters hanging around that top 15 in need of a victory. Jasduvicius is 35 years old out of St. Catharines, Ontario. She is 12-3 in her UFC career, riding a 3-fight winning streak, coming off of a loss against Tracy Cortez back in 2023. She bounces back with a submission win back in January, almost exactly a year ago. Then comes up with a unanimous decision win in July against Fatima Klein, no relation, and wraps up the year in Edmonton in November with a submission win over Ariane de Silva. So some good work here from Jasduvicius as she has moved up again into the top 15. But she isn't tough against Mayra Bueno Silva out of Brazil with a record of 10-4 and won with 1 no contest. But it's been a bit of a tough go for Bueno Silva lately. She has lost back-to-back fights, a unanimous decision loss against Raquel Pennington in Toronto for the vacant UFC Bantamweight Championship, and then followed that up with a loss against Macy Chiasson, a doctor stoppage at UFC 303 in June. Before that, she had lost, or it wasn't a loss, I guess. It was just a no contest in a fight against Holly Holm. She did win that fight, but then tested positive for acid, some kind of an acid. I was going to say acid, just thinking like, oh yeah, it's I'm melting, but then realized that there's an actual drug like that, and I don't know what that actually was. So, but before that, she had won 3 fights in a row against Lena Landsberg, Stephanie Egger, and Wu Yanan. So, this is a classic one where Bueno Silva, when she faces that kind of step up in competition, it doesn't go well for her. She's lost to Fiorot, she's lost to Raquel Pennington, and she has lost to Macy Chiasson. So the question is Jasduvicius someone who would account for being one of those top fighters? Like I said, she has worked her way into the top 15. She has a couple of finishes in that stretch. She's won 5 of her last 6 and comes into this one at 12-3 with 5 finishes on the 12 victories. Like I said, 2 finishes in her last 3 wins, though, is quite impressive. And for Silva, again, she has a couple of submission wins as well. I like Jasduvicius. Canadian fighter, got to get behind the Canadian fighters. I just don't think that she is quite on the level of Bueno Silva. It seems harsh, and it seems almost too simplistic, but that is just kind of where I come down on this one. I just feel like Bueno Silva is a level above, and those losses have just come against fighters that are, I think, a tier above, where Jasduvicius is. And so I am going Bueno Silva in this fight. I do think that there is a level that Jasduvicius can get to, but I don't think it is going to be in this one. So I just think it's a tough style matchup for Jasduvicius. I think a lot of stuff that she does well, Bueno Silva does well as well. So it's going to be a bit of a tough one for here. Sorry, just trying to, while we're doing this, pull up the odds for these bouts. Definitely should have done that before we got going. So, that thing that I said before about, oh yeah, this is one of the best months we've had on the channel. And that's with professional stuff like this. Imagine when I actually get my shit together, how good things are going to be. So, interested that Jasduvicius is that big of a favorite at minus 222. Think there's an underdog play here with Bueno Silva at plus 185. And I understand, like, Bueno Silva has lost a couple in a row, and it hasn't looked awesome, but I do just think that she is just a little bit of a level above Jasduvicius. So I think maybe potential for a little bit of value in that particular bout. Other fights of note on this one, Said Nurmagomedov taking on Vinicius Oliveira. We've talked before about Nurmagomedov trying to break through there. I think that he is a significantly better fighter than Oliveira is. I don't think that there is a whole lot that needs to be broken down here, although the odds are a little bit closer than I was anticipating, with Nurmagomedov only at minus 161. So, again, I don't love anything beyond minus 150, but I think that just based off of how much better I think Nurmagomedov is than Oliveira, I think that there is an opportunity there from a gambling standpoint. Heavyweight division, Sergey Pavlovich taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. For Pavlovich, at 32 years old, it feels like he's just been in our lives for a really long time to be 32 years old. Coming off back-to-back losses, but again, against Tom Aspinall and Alexander Volkov. Before that, wins over Curtis Blades, Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis, among others. Had a pretty good win streak going there before, after losing to Alistair Overeem. Decision loss in his last one against Volkov. Hadn't needed the judges' scorecards in a really long time. It was between 2017 and the middle of 2024 for Pavlovich. Going up against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, someone who had a lot of people's attention for a little bit, but has run into some problems. Remember, he was 10-0 to start the career, and then he takes on Francis Ngannou, and he loses in 20 seconds, and it seems like it's kind of spiraled on him a little bit. Beats JDS, loses to Cyril Gane. Beats Sakai, loses to Blades and Volkov. Beats Christakis, loses to Almeida. Beats Gaziev and Tuivasa. Now going into a fight here with Pavlovich. Again, this is another one where I just view Pavlovich as a step above and someone who I don't think that there should be a whole lot of an issue for Pavlovich in this particular bout. And I just don't, from a wagering standpoint, there isn't a whole lot of value on this one. Pavlovich to win by knockout is minus 263. So the odds makers are in line with us on that one. Then we get to the two big fights at the middleweight division. It is Shara Bullet taking on Michael Venom Page. I am very intrigued by this one because I think these are two fighters who have similar styles, very different expectations, but do come in kind of at the, like, it's, I was going to say they come in at the same kind of like popularity rating, but I don't think that's it at all. It's the expectations are higher for MVP. The, I guess, Q rating for Shara Bullet is way up here, and their skills are probably even. So it's a very intriguing fight when it comes to this sort of a thing. I think this is going to be an all-action fight. I think this is going to probably go down, boxing and UFC combined. I think this is going to go down as one of the fights of the weekend, probably the best fight of the weekend that we get here. I think MVP is just a little bit better suited for that. I think he has faced significantly better competition than Magomedov has. And while Bullet is very creative with his striking, so is MVP. But again, he's done it at higher levels. And now, higher levels in different promotions that aren't as high as the UFC. But I think if you just went fight for fight, resume for resume, it is significantly over on the MVP side of things. And so I think that this is a fight that we see Michael Venom Page get back on track in. I think that, again, his striking is just at a bit of a different level than it is for Shara Bullet. And again, this is one where we differ on the odds makers. MVP at plus 150 right now, with Shara Bullet at minus 182, and even MVP to win by knockout plus 600 is, I think, an interesting one. Maybe it is over for MVP. Maybe it just, he does not have it anymore. You don't think of him as kind of an over-the-hill guy or anything like that, but he's 37 years old. And he has kind of bounced around a little bit. Now, he is fighting in the middleweight division, which is a weight class above what he has fought at in the past, fighting for the welterweight championship in Bellator, and so far just fighting at welterweight in the UFC. So that will be interesting to see where that power kind of goes to for him, and that's going to be very interesting. He has fought at middleweight before, back in 2013 in the Super Fight League. He won by rear naked choke. That was his fifth fight in his career, part of a very good start to the career that saw a bunch of wins in the first round in a row, before he ultimately does get tested and loses to Douglas Lima. As we've said before, he has bounced back in big ways. So there is some concern about where does that power carry? How does that power work going up to 185 pounds. Quick shout out, Deeds. Yeah, thank you. Doing my own thing, gaming on Twitch, so have a great stream. Sorry that we are streaming at the same time, my guy. Apologies for that. But yeah, you have a great stream as well, Deeds. Thank you so much for popping in and appreciates the support as always. So yes, I'm very interested to see what MVP does up in the middleweight division. But let's take a look at kind of the measurables. It is MVP at 6'3", again, normally coming in at 170 pounds, but this one going to be 185. He has a 79-inch reach advantage. Sorry, not reach advantage, just reach. I do that a lot, and I shouldn't. Magomedov, 30 years old, 6'2", with a 73-inch reach. So MVP is still going to be the bigger guy here. And he is just, I think, set up well for middleweight. So I don't think it's going to be a problem going up to the heavier weight class. I think this is a really fun fight. I think it's a really intriguing one. But in the end, I think MVP just a bit too advanced on the feet for the guy who goes by Shara Bullet. Deeds. Oh, good. You have a schedule. I mean, I should, but it bounces around. I don't stick to it. I said it and then I don't stick to it, but trying to get better at that. We go to the main event. It is Israel Adesanya taking on Nassourdine Imavov. This one, again, gigantic. When you are looking at the stakes and what is on the line for these two guys, we laid it out in the kind of primer that we did at the start of the week. This is a fight for relevancy for both. Israel Adesanya is was probably the second best middleweight in the history of the sport, behind Anderson Silva, and a phenomenal champion. A one-time pound-for-pound number one in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. But he's lost 3 of his last 4, and back-to-back fights. He lost the middleweight championship, and then tried to get it back, and couldn't. The last time he fought in a fight that was not for a championship, you have to go all the way back to February of 2019 when he beat Anderson Silva back in Melbourne, Australia. He won by unanimous decision. He then gets a shot at the interim title against Kelvin Gastelum, and we are off and running. But now it is again back-to-back losses. He has lost 3 of his last 4. If we want to be talking about championship fights, if we want to be talking about mega fights, this is the fight that has to get him back on track. It has to be a win, and honestly, it probably has to be a little bit impressive. For Imavov, he is 29 years old, out of Dagestan. He has fought at welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight, accumulating a record of 15 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest. That no contest coming back because of a accidental clash of heads at UFC 289 in 2023. Since then, he's won 3 fights in a row, beating Brendan Allen, Jared Cannonier, and Roman Dolidze. He had a step up in competition before, losing to Sean Strickland in the light heavyweight division back in 2023. He moves back down to middleweight, and there are some problems for him. I guess again, it's the clash of heads, and then there was a deduction of a point for an illegal soccer kick, but he still won that fight. So there haven't really been problems. He's won 3 fights in a row, and is kind of building here. At 29, I don't want to say a loss here and it's over, but it would be a bit of a pattern where, okay, step up and then loss, and then build back up, step up, fight, and then loss. So for him, if he wants to ramp this thing up, and if he wants to get into the title picture, it has to be a win here this weekend. This is going to be the biggest stage that he is going to be on, and this is going to be one of the more high-profile fights that he is going to get. It is at a time where maybe Adesanya's skills don't necessarily match up with where the brand name is, and that is a phenomenal spot to be in if you are looking to kind of build your name off of that a little bit. The problem is, I still think Adesanya has it a little bit. Right? Like, I don't think he is just, like, completely washed by any stretch of the imagination. So let's break this one down. Imavov throws with power. That's one of the things when you go and watch, and you see the resume for him. It is, I just want to get this exactly right. Like I said before, he is 15-4. He does have 6 knockout wins. So it's 10 finishes in 15 UFC fights, but his last 3 fights, only 1 finish. And 3 of his last 4 have gone to the judges' scorecards. And so again, as we've kind of moved up in competition, the finishes have kind of stopped. And it's a little strange to see that, because he does throw with a substantial amount of power. And if there's ground and pound, he throws with just vicious intentions. So there's a lot of power that comes in there. But the one thing, and we will harp on this in MMA forever, it's one and done a lot of the time. Now, it is one and done because there is some very impressive movement. It's a lot of like hit, out of the way, and some grid head movement there. Like defensively, he's pretty good. Volume-wise, he's kind of middle of the pack. It's around 4.5 strikes landed per minute. The upper echelon fighters getting around, like the leaders in that category, I should say, are getting around 8 and 9. Now, there's some weight class stuff in there and all of that, but he's not going to put a ton of volume on you. It's not going to be a ton of combinations, but when he hits you, it sucks. So it's an interesting one because he is capable of putting a lot of that volume out there. And Israel Adesanya is a next level counter striker. But Imavov hits and moves really, really, really well. So that's what I think makes this a very interesting fight, is that Imavov, you hear Dagestan and you think, oh, he's going to take him down and try to elbow the piss out of him. And he might still. But that is not necessarily the game plan that is often thrown out there for Nassourdine Imavov. What he likes to do is dictate the pace, really push forward, and land those big shots and move and have those really big moments and try to wear you down that way. Adesanya, I think he's better when he's leading the dance, but he seems more comfortable when he is the one kind of counter-striking. The one issue is we've seen that start to slow a little bit. Like Sean Strickland really controlled the octagon against him in that title fight, and I think that kind of set a bit of a blueprint. Imavov, I don't know if he's going to have the patience to follow that necessarily. So I do think that eventually it's just going to be Adesanya's fight. He has more high-level experience, and I know we're leaning on that a little bit too much on this card, but he has way more high-level experience. He is just, I think, a higher-level striker than Imavov is, and so I think as the fight goes on, Adesanya is going to see these openings, see his opportunities, and really try to put it on the 29-year-old from Dagestan. The other thing that I did notice is that it gets really zombie-like and really sloppy when the gas tank starts to go a little bit for Imavov. And so I would not recommend a rope-a-dope technique from Israel Adesanya, because I do think that there is a concern of just getting blasted in the face one too many times and, oh, hey, look at that. Now I have lost 3 fights in a row and things feel like they are spiraling a little bit. But I do think that the longer this fight goes, the more it benefits Israel Adesanya. And I just feel like the style that Imavov wants to stay in is a style that Izzy can thrive in. But is that the same Izzy? Do we get that piston-like counter-striking? Do we get the flowing striking ability of one of the best strikers to have ever graced the octagon here in the start of 2025? What does Izzy have left? The old Izzy, the former pound-for-pound champion, beats the shit out of this guy, quite frankly. Is that guy still there for Israel Adesanya? Or are we entering kind of a last chapter for the last stylebender? Going to be a really, really interesting fight. And then you add the stakes on top of it of how important this is for Israel Adesanya, how big of a fight this is for Imavov. It is just such an intriguing matchup here this weekend out in Saudi Arabia. My official prediction is Israel Adesanya. I do think that the judges will be required for this particular bout. And so Adesanya, like right now, over 4.5 rounds, minus 200. We're not getting much value there. Fight goes the distance, minus 179. We're not getting much value there. The odds makers making us make a pick on it. So we're going to go Israel Adesanya. It is minus 159, so we don't love that. I'm going to say Adesanya by decision. We get a nice little plus 140 on the old bingo card for Adesanya in that bout. So a few underdog plays and a few plus money plays that we get on this UFC Fight Night card. Going to be very interesting. And like I said before, going to be a historic bout coming up this weekend out in Saudi Arabia. But that is just one part of a wonderful trifecta of combat this weekend. We start with the UFC. We now pivot to the world of boxing as David Benavidez has made his way onto the pound-for-pound top 10 list with impressive performance after impressive performance. This one may not move him up much higher, but it puts him in an unbelievable spot going forward. All he has to do is run through an undefeated prospect who himself wants to set himself up for a gigantic 2025. It is Benavidez, it is Morrell Jr. Let's break it down, shall we? It will be David Benavidez against David Morrell Jr. For the WBA regular light heavyweight championship coming up this weekend. A very, very intriguing fight as Benavidez has been the star on the rise for a long time. But he now he is right there, but he is facing another star who feels like they should be rising up as David Morrell Jr. looks for the biggest win of his career. It goes down at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. No, it doesn't. T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, coming up this weekend. So let's break this fight down, shall we? Benavidez, one of the rising stars in the sport of boxing at 28 years old, born in Phoenix, Arizona, with the nickname the Mexican Monster. He stands 6 feet tall, with a 74.5-inch reach out of the orthodox stance. 29 fights, 29 wins, 24 of them coming by way of knockout. Now, his last win didn't, as he won the WBC Interim Light Heavyweight Championship over Gvozdyk. He beat Andre by retirement in the middle rounds in 2023, and unanimous decision win over Caleb Plant. So that's really where things started to rise. I guess back 2022 is when it really started to rise. He beats David Lemieux, and it's like, okay, you do that, we're working some stuff here. We're really building. And then a Caleb Plant win, that's a very impressive one. Andre, I didn't love how he started, but he got the job done. And then a unanimous decision win in his last fight back in Vegas. He has really built up a high-level resume deserving of a lot of the conversations that he has been included in. And look, like I have him in my top 10 pound-for-pound rankings right now. If you just looked at the resume, I don't know if you can get there with him. There are probably some guys who are much more deserving than Benavidez to get there. But a lot of that is kind of projecting because he has the talents and he has the abilities to work his way up and probably even higher. Like, honestly, I think he has the talent to be a number one pound for pound fighter. I really genuinely do. I don't think that he has been given the opportunities yet. Although, like, there's a couple good ones on there, right? Like David Lemieux, Caleb Plant. But I think after that, like, Andre is good. Gvozdyk is good as well. But I think this one here, if we're talking about some, like, real high-level opportunities, holy hell does he have some big ones coming up if he is able to win this one. Hello, Spy Canuck. Good day to you as well. Thank you very much for popping in today. For this fight for Benavidez, like we have said, for so long, people have been clamoring it needs to be him against Canelo. And let's really get this Mexican star thing going. Although, again, like we said, he is certainly born in Arizona, but born to a Mexican father and an Ecuadorian mother. There certainly is the heritage that people can get behind for him, as people are kind of clamoring him for him to be the one who gets Cinco de Mayo and who gets Mexican Independence Day weekend every year now instead of Canelo Alvarez, or at least alongside Canelo Alvarez. And so you want that, you need to win this fight right here. And it has to be so tough for Benavidez to not look ahead, because a win here, and we kind of laid it out on the pound for pound episode on, the stream was on Tuesday, the episode came out Wednesday. It is a win here potentially puts him in line for the undisputed light heavyweight championship winner between Beterbiev and Bivol at the end of the month. Whether they want to do that, May is just, it's a tight turnaround for how boxing generally does things. But could you see a not Cinco de Mayo, we just said May, the Mexican Independence Day weekend in September? Could you see that? 100% you could. Win that fight, and then it's probably Canelo. And we're talking about life-changing money and life-altering opportunities. And you win both of those, and we're talking about pound-for-pound number one fighter in the world categories at this point. So it is tough to not look ahead from a guy who has 11 professional fights. But Morrell has proven that that would be a mistake. David Morrell Jr. is 6'1", born in Santa Clara, Cuba. He has fought 11 times, he's won all of them, and he's knocked out all but 2 of his opponents. We ran through his resume the other day, but a reminder, 11 professional fights. 8 of them have involved some kind of a championship on the line. And we're not talking about like the Quaker State durability title or anything like that, which was a real ass thing that I saw one time. But in his third pro fight, he won the vacant WBA interim super middleweight title from Lennox Allen. A couple of fights, then he has one fight that doesn't have a title on it. And then from 5-0 all the way up to 11-0, we are talking about championship after championship after championship after championship after championship fight. His last bout, he wins the vacant WBA regular light heavyweight championship at BMO Stadium in Los Angeles on the Terrence Crawford undercard that he fought on back there in August for Riyadh season. So there's this is an impressive resume for a kid who has fought 11 times as a professional. And again, the amateur resume is nuts. 2016 Youth World Championship. He finished his amateur career with a record of 130-5. He won the best boxer of the tournament at the, again, 2016 World Youth Championship, 2017 Cuban National Championships, and he won the 2018 India International Boxing Tournament. So he won championship after championship after championship along the way. And so he was like, after 2 fights in his pro career, I kind of like it when there's gold on the line, so let me just roll with it in this one. Now, again, we talked about those finishes. He has a unanimous decision in his third fight, which is definitely a big step up for him, and he has a unanimous decision win in his last fight against Kalajdzic. Apologies for definitely saying that one wrong. But that was, again, a bit of a step up in competition for him. And so if you're, again, going resume for resume, it ain't close. Anyone that of those last 4 fighters that Benavidez has fought would by great leaps and bounds, be the biggest fight that Morrell Jr. has ever had in his career. And now he has to fight the guy who has beat all of them. I do think he has the skills and the ability to be able to pull off the upset in this fight. The one thing I don't love about Benavidez is that at times we have seen him be a bit of a slow starter. And like in the Andrade fight, Andrade would push forward and start landing combos, and it's cover up immediately. And I'm not saying that there's cowardice or anything like that. I'm just saying that that is a way to lose rounds very, very quickly. And he really did let Andrade start to build those up and build those up and build those up. But then by the 5th round, he's kind of figured it out. And now he starts landing with power. And the second it really starts landing, he is just like a shark in the water, man. It is really impressive to see. I guess the instincts, the ability, and it all kind of coming together. The second that he notes, like, okay, I think I figured this out, and he gets going, it is a steamroller. It is impressive to watch. They both really do have like game-altering, life-changing power in their hands. Morrell throwing it sometimes a bit too much, one at a time. Benavidez can put a few more of those combinations together. The thing that's unique about Morrell, he has a really long stance. And like I don't think he's that huge of a guy. Let's take a look. He's 6'1". Benavidez is coming into this one at 6 feet. So they're basically the same. Morrell is going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. And so that's where I think if Morrell was a little bit more advanced in his career, I think that reach advantage could actually be very interesting because of the power that he has and because of the stance that he employs, where it is really, really long. And at times, anyway, he can get really, really long. And so that's a way that you can use that reach advantage and kind of catch Benavidez coming in. I do think both guys are better when they are on their front foot. But I do think, like, again, that counter-striking ability always intrigues me in a sport like boxing where the openings can be so quick and you can cover up a little bit more. Counter-striking just in general, I've always been a fan of. And like in the UFC, you pay for it a little bit more because you can't cover up as quickly, and also there's just more openings there with the smaller gloves. With boxing, because you can cover up a little bit more, I think that counter-striking is a good way to take advantage of the brief openings that there are in this sport. So that was just a bit of a tangent. Back to this fight. I just went on a whole big thing about, oh yeah, you know what? Morrell could be an interesting counter-striker. So I think he benefits from pushing the pace. I understand that that's a little counterintuitive, but I think that there is a lot of power in his hands. And I do, like I said, I do think that Benavidez will start a little bit slow and try to, because there's only 11 professional fights of this guy on tape to really kind of scout, and there isn't as much kind of high-level opportunities that he has to scout. I just talked about all the championships that he has won, but again, he hasn't fought anyone at this level. So you don't really know how he's going to react to this situation. I think Benavidez is going to want to take a lot of that information in, kind of download it all, and see what he's got. While that's happening, Morrell needs to be blasting the hell out of him and really throwing with that power and really trying to get off and really trying to establish that pace and that tone early on. Once Benavidez gets rolling, that's where I think, again, that length and the potential to counter-strike really does have to kind of come into play, because Benavidez will not slow down, and you have to have something to try to keep him off. So I think the jab is going to be really important for Morrell Jr. in this fight. I'm laying out a bunch of different ways for how I think Morrell Jr. can win. I think he has to fight perfectly to win this fight. If we are just, again, looking at like a video game overall or whatever, it is Benavidez. 100 times out of 100, it is Benavidez. Morrell has to fight perfectly to win this fight. And honestly, even if he does, it may not be enough. I do think that there is a talent gap there. I think this is a good opportunity for Morrell Jr. to show what he has. I think this is a good opportunity for Morrell Jr. to get into a national spotlight and create some opportunities here for himself. I just don't think this is a fight that he is going to win. I think Benavidez, again, we kind of talked about this in the UFC breakdown. I think these two guys can fight a similar style, and Benavidez is just better at it than Morrell Jr. is. I think that ball is going to get rolling for him. I do think that there is going to be some real good pressure here put on by Benavidez throughout this fight, and I think eventually that does kind of break through for him, and he'll be the one to pick up a victory here. Trying to find the odds, again, very, very quickly. Man, some of these, the way that these are set up sometimes is very, very frustrating for me. But right now, I can't even see if there are any odds for this one. Are we that lopsided or am I just that blind? Either way, I'm not seeing it right now, so maybe we'll try to check back on that later. Follow me on social media at Primetime Klein, and maybe we'll get some predictions out there. But I think Benavidez wins, and I think he wins it by knockout. So that is kind of the way that I think that one is going to go. In the chat, Spy Canuck is asking, Super Bowl thoughts. I know we said combat sports focus, but I also say, like, if you got any thoughts in the chat, I will gladly take them on. So let's play the football video and let's have some early Super Bowl thoughts, shall we? Super Bowl thoughts. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. There is a lot that I'm excited to break down about this particular game over the next week as we get this kind of break here in between. The good thing about this one, Spy Canuck and others, is that this is a game between basically two healthy teams, right? Like Kansas City... Rashee Rice, I think, fixes a lot of the concerns that a lot of people have about the Chiefs' offense and their explosivity and all of those things. He's not in the lineup. That sucks. But aside from that, like guys who have, regularly contributed for both teams this year, pretty healthy on both sides. I know Eagles fans are screaming, what about Dean, please. Sparks have been a fine replacement there. But for the most part, healthy coming into this one. I think, as cliche as it is, and especially for a guy of my size, 6'4", around 250, oddly enough, I'm going to think it comes down to the big fellas. But I do think that this game is really going to be won and lost in the trenches. I think the Eagles' offensive line is spectacular. And the fact that they could go from having Jason Kelce, an all-pro center, one of the best to ever do it, and he just retires. And I don't want to say they didn't miss a beat, but they continue on as not just a good offensive line, but probably the best offensive line in the league. That is damn impressive. And if they can win the battle up front against the Kansas City Chiefs defensive front, then I think this is going to be a very, very solid day for the Eagles and an opportunity for them to go out and win a championship. I think conversely, on the other side, we have seen Jalen Carter is a game wrecker for the Philadelphia Eagles up the middle. And the only time the Kansas City Chiefs have stumbled in the Super Bowl, it is because they couldn't they couldn't protect Mahomes for shit. And eventually that pressure just broke through. I think that's going to be a very big test on Kansas City's offensive line that has talent, but as a unit hasn't necessarily been as strong this season. They have tried a few different things at tackle and at guard, and it has been varying levels of success in those spots. And so Mahomes is a magician and all of those things. But the great thing about Mahomes is that if you blitz him, he kills you. So how do you counter that? You have a gigantic building of a defensive tackle race through that offensive line and cause problems for him. If you can get pressure just with 4 on Mahomes, it really does kind of change the dynamic of this game quite a bit. Because I think when you're looking at like Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Xavier Worthy on the outsides, I would give the advantage to the young secondary for the Eagles in just one-on-one matchups on maybe not even necessarily one-on-one, but I think that defensively they can hang with those guys enough that if we can get pressure as an Eagles team, I'm a Raiders fan. I promise it's not a we thing here. I'm just saying, like, from their perspective, if I'm the Eagles, if I can get pressure with 4, and then my linebackers can kind of sit back in coverage, maybe we even have a spy on Mahomes, which I suggested last week and it killed them that they didn't, but that's beyond the point. Kind of clog up some of those passing lanes a little bit. I think my defensive backs are good enough that we can limit things on them, that there's going to be a few tight windows and a few difficult plays for Mahomes to make. So that is going to be such a key factor in this football game is can they get to Mahomes with that? And so I'm going to be interested to kind of break all of that down and see it kind of all play out throughout the week. The other part of this that I am really, really interested in is one of the things we've talked about on this show all year long is Kansas City is really, really good at taking away your number one receiving threat. But that has left them vulnerable to different things at times. You look back throughout the season, that week 1, everyone's losing their mind. Isaiah Likely is the new guy. He is the number 1 tight end out in Baltimore. And now it's funny, you close out the season and everyone's saying Isaiah Likely is the number 1 tight end in Baltimore. It's so funny to see how that played out. Oh, hey, shout out Near Lump, not trolling or any kind of bot at all. Anyway, that left them very vulnerable. And then we saw as the weeks go on, well, no, Mark Andrews is still pretty good. So what happened in that game? You go back and watch, they doubled him the whole game. They recognized that is the number 1 option. That's the number 1 guy that's going to beat us. We're not going to let him. If you want to beat us with Likely, go nuts. Fill your boots, man. Go for it. And they did that to basically everyone. You go back it becomes a bit of a startling thing, and it becomes a little bit frustrating for fantasy owners because you see New Orleans played against them. I'm pretty sure it was a New Orleans game. And Olave didn't do a thing, but Shaheed put up like 125 yards because they just go full lockdown on the number 1 option. And if you can beat us with your number 2, go for it. That becomes an issue when you have the receiving depth and everything that the Philadelphia Eagles have with... Okay, so let's say it's McDuffie on Brown, and then you get the safety help over the top. Like, we're just bracketing Brown all game. Well, Dallas Goedert can kill you. Devonta Smith, I don't want to say he can kill you, but he can come up with enough good plays that he can put you in those positions. So I think Philadelphia is a very difficult stylistic matchup here for the Kansas City Chiefs. And that, again, makes it a bit of a tough spot for them. I haven't come up with a pick yet because I did this same thing last week where my initial thought was I can't go against Mahomes and I can't go against Andy Reid. And then I looked at it and it's like, Baltimore's defense isn't great, but I think I think Josh Allen, he's playing the best football of his career. And he plays in such a way that, and they're set up in a way that whole we're going to just shut down your number 1 doesn't work against those guys because they don't really have a real number 1, right? And then it turned out that they didn't have a real number 1, so none of their guys could get open against any kind of the coverage out there. And so I went in and talked myself into the Buffalo Bills because I just thought that they were built in a way that they could beat Kansas City. And now I'm looking at it and my initial thought is it's Mahomes, it's Reid, but Philadelphia is built in such a way that I think they can take advantage of Kansas City's weaknesses. But picking against Mahomes last week sucked. You watch that game for a second. It's like, oh my gosh. He's a wizard. He is just a wizard. And you have 2 very good defensive minds in this game in Spags on Kansas City and Vic Fangio for the Philadelphia Eagles. So there are going to be a lot of really, really fun sorts of pressures and everything that get dialed up. I think what is going to ultimately be the X factor, and it's weird for a quarterback to be the X factor, but the Chiefs are going to try to put the Eagles in a spot where Hurts, Smith, and Goddard have to beat them. And I don't know if Hurts has that. He looked good in the NFC Championship game against the Commanders. Like, I thought he looked really, really good. He looked healthy. He was moving around and all of that. But Washington's defense ain't that Kansas City one. And so I think that this is going to be a game that it's going to come down to, can Jalen Hurts come up with a couple of those big plays that they couldn't a couple of years ago? Does he have that in his bag of tricks? And I just don't know if he does. But they're set up to take advantage of it if he does. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to break it down all week. We got a lot of good stuff coming up here on Super Bowl week leading up to the big game, as they call it, on Sunday. Spy Canuck, sorry, I missed that before. Mahomes can get impatient if you can keep him in the pocket, maybe causes a few turnovers. That was the thing that I got frustrated with Buffalo last week, is 2 weeks ago in the divisional round, they had Matt Milano as the spy on Lamar Jackson the whole game. And they limited Lamar to 39 yards on the ground. And they didn't really do that against Mahomes. They lost contain on him a lot, and he was able to get outside. And those are the plays that just kill you with Mahomes, is his use with his legs. It's either you're so worried about the big pass, and then he runs out, and every run that he gets is a first down, whether it's because of a flop or not. But every run that he gets is a first down, and it's so infuriating, and it just feels so backbreaking. I don't know why it feels worse with him than it does with almost any other quarterback, but it just does. But then also, like, his creativity when he is outside of the pocket is exceptional. So right, you are 100% right there, Spy Canuck. If there is any kind of contain there, that you can kind of keep Mahomes in the pocket and keep him bottled up. He's still excellent. He's still elite, right? There's no question about that. But you have a better chance of beating him there than you do if he is rolling around and getting creative and doing all of those sorts of things. So yeah, if you can just keep him as a pocket passer, he's still incredibly talented, but I do think that that gives you a bit of a fighting chance there. I also think a quick start for the Eagles is going to be important because I think Mahomes really does get impatient with that, like you said, when he's trailing and when he feels like he has to force things. And we go back to the Texas Tech days where he's putting up 49 points, but his defense is putting up allowing 56. Like he feels he needs to score on every possession. If you can kind of put him back in that mindset, that's where some of the mistakes really do start to happen. Any sort of criticism or critique of Mahomes is with the understanding that he's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen in my life. And he is a one of one. But when we're talking about these things, it's not that he just like all of a sudden turns into Ryan Leaf. It is that he goes from being 100% the most talented guy we've ever seen to like 98%. And you have to take advantage of that little too and try to find those little half percentage points along the way. You're 100% right, Spy Canuck. Chiefs could play an average game and still win. We have seen that throughout. You have to play perfectly against these guys for 60 minutes to beat them. And it doesn't happen a whole lot. And also, it's very rare that you play 60 minutes of perfect football in the biggest game of your life in the Super Bowl. And the Chiefs are so good at taking advantage of that as well. That's something we're going to talk about as the week rolls along. But it's going to be a really, really, really intriguing week to go through it all and to break it all down. And then a game next weekend that I cannot wait for. So we're going to look at, just to kind of break it all down right now, going to look at the early storylines coming up on Monday, basically like a fight week, right? Like we're going to look at the big stories coming into this one. We're going to look at some legacy stuff, Andy Reid, and all of those sorts of things, and just kind of do a bit of a coaching breakdown. Season recap for both teams, like how did we get here, sort of a thing. Just kind of go back, remind ourselves of a few sorts of things. Got a couple of other off-season look-aheads as well, and then the big preview episode. I do think this week it is, no, we're still... I think I have to do it on Friday with just a few other things going on, but this is a week. A lot of times we've been doing 4 shows a week, even 3 shows a week on here and kind of splitting it out. This is one where it's 5 shows. It's Super Bowl week. We're going to do all of that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Do you give the Cavalry FC any airtime? I definitely should. And I definitely want to. We had season tickets a couple of years ago and had a blast. I have really enjoyed any time I've got to chat with Tommy on the radio and stuff like that. So I would love to. Just in general, soccer is something I want to give a little bit more time to on this show. And so, yes, I've said before that the most popular phrase on Couch Potato Diary is we're changing things up, but I do want to look at kind of expanding a lot of the stuff we talk about and a lot of the local stuff, right? Like I have a Calgary clothing company. I should be looking at some local things. So I do want to get Cavalry involved. Also, I just want to say, quick shout out. It should absolutely, and not just because I'm technically an employee of theirs now, it should be on everyone's sports bucket list to go check out a Crowchild Classic this week tomorrow at the Dome. It is the Calgary Dinos taking on Mount Royal in hockey, men's and women's on the hockey side. And it is such an amazing atmosphere and such an awesome product that gets put on there. Like I said, full disclosure, I am a part-time employee of the University of Calgary, although I am a Mount Royal alum. So I'm biased on both sides, I guess. But I think that this is something you absolutely need to check out. And when we're talking about some of the talent here, I think U-Sport hockey is so slept on in this country because of the levels that players can get to. And look, in Calgary, there's a lot of things fighting for your hockey attention, right? Like the Flames actually don't suck. The Wranglers are a lot of fun. The Hitmen are in a playoff race right now. So you have those things all competing for your money. The Calgary Canucks have been relevant for a couple of years now. And so it is easy for U Sports to kind of fade into the background a little bit. But the talent on both sides of the ice, men's and women's, is going to be really, really fun to watch in that game with You have Anderson on one side for the. I'm more familiar with the women's side. I've done play-by-play for a few women's games, and it's factored in both teams. But Anderson and Joma for Calgary and for Mount Royal, some high-level talent in that game. So I would absolutely say, if you can't check it out this year, put the Crowchild Classic on your Calgary sports bucket list. But yes, Cavalry FC, because they win the league, we're getting into CONCACAF stuff next week. So I will make a note of that, Spy Canuck, and we'll try to get some Cavalry FC talk going on here. I know Conrad with Game Over Calgary. He is I was going to say he is a big Cavalry FC supporter. He is one of the biggest Cavalry FC supporters. His passion for the sport. He does a lot of work with the kind of the grassroots level with broadcasts and stuff like that, and then a lot of great things with the foot soldiers. So might have to get Conrad on here to get rocking and rolling with some footy talk on Couch Potato Diary. So we'll definitely keep that in mind, Spy Canuck, as we move forward. We go from the beautiful game to the beautiful art form that is professional wrestling. The WWE has one of its marquee events coming up with the WWE Royal Rumble. We have talked about it ad nauseum. It is finally here. Let's break it down. If you are going to watch one wrestling event all year, it's this weekend. WWE Royal Rumble is here from Indianapolis, Indiana. It is going to be a blast. In the main event, it's a Royal Rumble match. It's so much fun. This year, not going to be doing the regular Royal Rumble party that I normally do with some friends and stuff like that. Shout out, fantasy football runner-up, wife. It's her birthday this weekend. Technically Monday, which is why no live stream Monday, by the way, just putting that out there now. But it is it's her birthday weekend, so we're going to be partying, going to be doing some of that, and shocking to me, I know, but that doesn't include a Royal Rumble party for her. So my usual watching of that is going to be changed a little bit. I will gladly help people, because we have a game with the Royal Rumble that has turned people into wrestling fans, quite frankly. So it gets people involved in stuff with that. So if you want some tips on that, glad to help. But in terms of the actual show, doing something a little bit different with the breakdown this year, looking at what I would do and what they'll do. And we got to get into some of the surprises and things like that as well, right? Like who are going to be some of the, oh my God, shockers that we get in the Royal Rumble here. So let's not do the big matches first. Let's start at the bottom and kind of work our way up. Tag team titles on the SmackDown side. I think that makes them the WWE tag team titles. It is DIY against the Motor City Machine Guns. I have said before, I think this is a brilliant use of the Royal Rumble. You have a concept that draws people in, that gets people very, very excited about your product, because it is a match maybe unlike any other in wrestling that you just say, Royal Rumble tonight, people are going to watch. Old wrestling fans are going to watch because they know what that means. And if you want to try to get some new ones in, it's a great, you introduce them to, on this night, 60 wrestlers that are going to get people going and make it really, really exciting. So I just feel like that is a draw into itself. And so in years past, they've done a pretty good job of, hey, let's just throw something out there that maybe we wouldn't put on a traditional pay-per-view otherwise. But because we already have the draw of the Royal Rumble, we can be a little bit flexible. We can be a little bit creative. They've tried that in the past with, hey, let's see, before Edge was Edge, they gave him a title opportunity. Razor Ramon gets a title opportunity at a Royal Rumble back in the day. This was a chance for them to get a little bit like, okay, let's see, this mid-carder, is there a draw here? Sometimes it was yes, sometimes it was Bob Holly. So you can work with that a little bit. But in this one, you are getting 4 teams in a spotlight event with more people watching than maybe ever before because of Netflix and all of that. And you are giving them a chance to, hey, you know what? Just go out there and be awesome. And I'm pretty sure I saw this was 2 out of 3 falls, right? I want to double check that and make sure. And by double check that, I mean go to Wikipedia again and check to be sure. But I'm 99% sure that match is best 2 out of 3 falls, right? Yeah, 2 out of 3 falls, tag team titles. These are 4 of the best performers in the world. And so to give them this spotlight is a great way. Like, this has potential star-making night written all over it for these guys. The problem is, by the end of the night, we're probably not going to be talking about it, right? We're going to be talking about whatever happens in the WWE title match, in the ladder match, and we're going to be talking about the Royal Rumble winners. But these guys have a chance to steal the show, and they have a chance to put on an unbelievable performance. All four of them are so talented. I think this is going to be one of the best matches of the year that we get. The 2 out of 3 falls format lets you be a little bit creative with some things and gives you a little bit of leeway, and then it allows you to create some drama towards the middle part of the match and into the late stages of it, I guess. But I just think with this kind of attention on this show and these performers, they have a chance to go out there and make a name for themselves. Kind of like an Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys at that ladder match in No Mercy. I know that's a comparison I made earlier this week. I think that they're going to have that moment for themselves here this weekend. I think they're going to put it on an unbelievable show. In terms of predictions, DIY come in as the champions. Going to break each match down into 2 parts. What I would do and what I think they'll do. We'll start, this one, it's both. Motor City Machine Guns. I think they'll put the titles back on Motor City Machine Guns. I think that they lose them on SmackDown. It's storyline purposes for building up Gargano and building up Ciampa and continuing them as kind of these heels. But again, I just think because Gargano and Ciampa are a little bit more established with the WWE audience, and Motor City Machine Guns, I think this will be their first premium live event that they'll be wrestling on. That gives them an opportunity to, like, hey, just so you guys know, these guys are a big deal. And how you do that, you get them to win the tag team titles. And so I think this is going to be a classic match. They're going to come out as the new champions. And I think that is a way to just kind of elevate everyone. But I think that this really is going to be a match where all 4 guys come out of it just feeling like bigger deals than they were going into it. Then we get into the 3 matches that people are really buzzing about. First, it is the ladder match for the WWE undisputed, but kind of disputed because there's also a world championship. It is Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, ladder match. I can't wait. I am so intrigued by this. I think the build has been spectacular with Kevin Owens and all the different shirts and all the different promos and everything. And it starts as these 2 friends and Cody has just given KO a shot. And it progresses through some Cody and Roman stuff into the feud of the year for Cody Rhodes outside, like, of the season, I guess, right? Because the Bloodline stuff, it's done. No one was buying Solo. No one was really buying any of the challenges, really, right? Like, AJ Styles, no one thought it was going to be that one that quickly. But this has been the feud of the Cody title run that has really elevated this to a higher level. And now we're seeing a bit of a sea change in Cody's character, where he's feeling like John and Way on the post-wrestling Raw breakdown. He kind of sounded drunk, where he's just tired. And he's, like he is... They are telling a story that he is wore down, that he is beaten down a little bit emotionally, physically, and all of these sorts of things. And the pressures of the championship and all of that really wearing on him. And that is such an interesting storytelling device. And so it is getting to the point where Kevin Owens beating Cody is almost doing him a favor to get this burden away from me and just let me be free as a performer again. And so I think there's a lot of interesting stories that you can tell with that and roll from there. And so I think that you have done with Kevin Owens and his promo abilities and his believability and everything like that, you have done a very good job, I think, of creating some doubt that Cody is going to leave the Royal Rumble as the champion. So what would I do? I have talked all week about how you can make a very compelling story going into WrestleMania about Kevin Owens as the champion and build around that. And anything Cody is in, you can still tell without Cody being the champion. But I still think Netflix era, going into WrestleMania season with all of these different things, I think Cody is probably going to get the win. And so I just think, while I greatly appreciate Kevin Owens and everything that he is as a performer and everything he can do as a performer, I think building into WrestleMania and telling some of the stories that I think they're going to tell, I think Cody has to be the guy who is the champion there and continue that kind of story and build up to his almost villain origins on down the line. What I think they'll do is kind of the same thing. I think that there are a lot of stories you can tell with Cody as champion and him starting to get beaten down a little bit. So I think that slight little everything's fine in Cody that we talked about the other day, I think this is just the start of it. And I think he still needs to be the champion to keep that going on a little bit more. That gets us to the Women's Royal Rumble match. I will say they have done a piss poor job of building this one up. The build for the Royal Rumble on the women's side has felt incredibly generic. When you look at how they have done it on the men's side with all the layers and a lot of long-term stories all spidering into this one big event, and it has the chance to blow up in a lot of different ways, that's not happening in the women's match. The women's Royal Rumble is, I'm going to win the Royal Rumble. No, I'm going to win the Royal Rumble. I'm probably not going to win the Royal Rumble, but I'm going to tell you I'm going to win the Royal Rumble. And I don't think anyone cares if I win the Royal Rumble, but I'm going to say I'm going to win the Royal Rumble. And hey, did you know it's the Royal Rumble? That has basically been it. There isn't this advanced look at storytelling or anything like that. It is just there are 30 people competing in this match, and one of them has to win it. That has basically been the extent of it. In terms of surprises and surprise entrants that we get, I think Jordynne Grace, it's funny to have an obvious surprise, but I think Jordynne Grace probably makes her debut. I know she's trying to hide it on social media where people are saying like, Jordynne Grace 100% is going to be in the Royal Rumble. And she's saying, actually, I'm throwing a birthday party for my mom this weekend. So that's not going to be it. I don't think, I'm not buying that one for a second. So I think we get Jordynne Grace. I think we get Mickie James. One that I hope we get Gail Kim. I hope that she gets an opportunity to, with this TNA, NXT, WWE thing, I hope that she gets a spotlight and she gets an opportunity to get that kind of recognition that she so very, very well, very, very richly deserves. So I hope that she gets that one. Way out of left field ones, I do wonder if we get a Britt Baker here. I do wonder if there is something along those lines. I think because this match hasn't really been set up as well, there's a lot more room for some of the surprises. Another one that I wonder, and it wouldn't be as big for a lot of people, but they had a bit of that partnership thing with Marigold, and nothing really has come from it since. Aside from like Julia got to wrestle on there for a little bit longer before coming to WWE. And so I wonder if you get a couple of performers from there and try to give them a bit of a spotlight and continue on this like, oh, AEW, you guys have like the forbidden door with all these promotions. We got that too. Here's someone coming in not under contract that is going to come into our Royal Rumble and put on an amazing performance. So I wonder if like Utami Hayashishita gets to come in and do a couple of things there or something along those lines. I do wonder if there is something with that. Admittedly, look, I am not up on Marigold right now. Let's see. What do we got going on for Marigold as their... Dreamstar fighting Marigold right now. Yeah, Utami Hayashishita is their world champion at this point. Mai Sakurai, really interesting personality. Her Stardom run last year was she would go out, she would win a match, and then she would shit talk the hometown. But, and look, I understand, like, oh, wow, groundbreaking thing. It wasn't your local sports team is shit. It wasn't whatever. It was the main cuisine in your area is subpar and you all eat it. So fuck you. I love that. Those are a couple of the ones that maybe you could see kind of popping their way in a little bit. So I wonder if like you get either a Sari or Utami Hayashishita or a Mai Sakurai. I wonder if they kind of pop in. Those would be my bigger surprises. Ultimately, what would I do? You guys, if you've been watching my content at all, you know the name that's about to come out of my mouth. It's Io Sky. She has, I think, really impressed in some roles where no one was expecting her to win a championship. She got the crowd behind her. She got people invested in what she was doing. There was chants. Now, part of that could be how over Liv Morgan was actually as a heel, but there were a lot of chants, and the energy just picked up when Io Sky would really get her things going. And so I think if you want to really solidify her as a main event level performer, you have her win this Royal Rumble and really drive in one more kind of main level performer. And it can be against Tiffany Stratton. I think that would be a really fun match. Rhea Ripley, I think stylistically, you would maybe have some issues. And then eventually, like, I don't know if Rhea's losing at WrestleMania. So if you are going to have Io win it only to lose it to Rhea Ripley, then that might be a bit of a problem. But I do think that, I think that Io, a win here would really solidify her as a main eventer in the women's scene right now. And they just don't have many of them. And I understand we're expecting a couple to come back, right? But I just don't feel like right now, the main event picture in total on the women's side is Rhea, Liv, and honestly, based on how that feud ended, it's hanging by a thread. And Tiffany Stratton. That's kind of it right now. And that is not a knock on the performers. That is a knock on how they have all been built. Like Naomi, Bianca, and Jade, injured Jade. That storyline has pushed things back to the point where that has been a mid-card thing. I get Nia Jax, they have put her in the main event, and she's competed for championships. She's lost now to both champions, but you can still consider her a main eventer, and you can squint and see what they've done with Bayley and say, hey, maybe that's a main eventer too, although she's lost a ton. So there just isn't a whole lot in that main event scene right now that gets you overly excited, and I think you can really create a new star with Io Sky moving her way in. A couple other surprises I forgot to mention before. I think Charlotte Flair, obviously, and I think Becky Lynch probably as well. And then I think from NXT, like Roxy Perez just kind of has to be. I would be surprised if there wasn't anything there. And Stephanie Vacour. I know I've just listed like 15 potential surprises, but those are the ones that I think might be it. In terms of what I think they'll do, Charlotte Flair, right? Like, we get in the vignettes, she is coming back, they love to push Charlotte Flair, and I know that was a regime in the past, but it's not like Triple H hasn't given her a whole lot either when it comes to NXT and those sorts of things. And so I think when they are looking at making Tiffany Stratton into that main event level performer that we were talking about, having a feud with Charlotte Flair, I think in their minds will really build that up. So I think Charlotte is the one who gets the opportunity at winning the Royal Rumble on the women's side. Which brings us to the men's Royal Rumble match. Again, I said it before when talking about the contrast between the women's and the men's. This one's been set up perfectly. There are so many stakes. Obviously, like the main event of WrestleMania is on the line, but it's on the line and everything. It feels different here. It feels so much more important because of all the different stories they have going on, all the different motivations, and so many of them leading up to a world championship opportunity. That there are going to be a number, I mean, obviously only one wins it. And it is like what we have seen in the NFL, where the Bills got close, but they lost. Seasons of disappointment. The Lions had an amazing run, lost. Seasons of disappointment. Ravens, same thing. Lost. Disappointment. It's going to be that for a lot of these guys. And they have told that story in such an awesome way that it just feels like, well, you can't, like, going through it, and we did the making the case for guys on Wednesday's show. There are so many that you can talk yourself into. And because of that, there's so many that it's like, what? Roman's not going to win? Okay, yeah, let's make it Roman. Well, what? CM Punk's not going to win? They just did a thing with Cody on Monday. Okay, yeah, no, it probably has to be. Yeah, but what about Seth? Seth just did a thing with okay, well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I guess probably, oh, what, John Cena's in here. You're not going to have John Cena win? Like, you just go on down the line. It's like, well, fuck, like, one of these guys, most of these guys have to lose. And that has done an amazing job. Like, there are times where you get down to that final four, and it's like, any one of these guys can win. Any one of these girls can win. This is going to be awesome. You might get that with 15. Like 30 hits, there's 15 performers left in the ring, and all of them could win, and you wouldn't doubt it for a second. It is an unbelievable use of one of the best storytelling devices WWE has right now, and they are building into this one picture perfectly. And so I think because of that, again, this was brought up on Post Wrestling with those guys. They were talking about it. It makes now the Elimination Chamber feel that much more important because now it's your last chance, and now it's building into that, and now it is putting this importance on just that spot, WrestleMania main event. And I don't know what it is, but it's just the way that it is being talked about, the way that it has all been built up. It all feels like a bigger deal right now because of how good the creative is and everything like that everything just, it feels like the stakes just have a little bit more to them. So that is why I am so excited for this one. In terms of surprises that we may get in this one, I don't know if we're going to get a ton. I think because there are so many bigger names in this already, that the opportunity to have, like, oh my god, I can't believe that guy is here, is pretty limited. I do wonder, like, an Obafemi probably gets a look in the Royal Rumble in kind of like the Keith Lee, like, oh, big boy thing. Obviously, they get to the big size a little bit differently. But I think Obafemi, he just has that look, he has the charisma, that it is going to feel like it is a big deal. If Big E is going to make any kind of comeback, it should probably be at the Royal Rumble. Although, again, then you run the risk of, it's probably not, like, it hasn't been built up all that well, and it might get lost in the shuffle when all is said and done. If, I said before, if the New Day had gotten rid of Big E, and now they're on this wild winning streak, then I think that could be a whole lot of fun. Spy Canuck, thank you so much. You have a great day as well. Thanks for hanging out here today. I promise it gets sportsier next week. This is just such a big weekend in wrestling and in combat sports. We had to do it like this today. But yeah, thank you so much for popping by today, Spy Canuck. I really appreciate it. I think if New Day was winning more, you could maybe tell a thing like, hey, Big E throws these guys out. They've been building all this momentum, and now he has come in and just cut it off and cost them their opportunities at something bigger, and that creates a bit of a feud there. That can get heated up pretty quick if they do bring him in and he throws them all out. I think that's a whole lot of fun. And then maybe they come back and cost him a little bit later, and you can tell a story that way. Again, that is if he is coming back, and I would put money against it. But it's just, we're fantasy booking here. In terms of outside guys, I don't know how many. Maybe Moose from TNA, maybe a Matt Cardona from TNA comes in and has a couple of kind of fun spots in that. I would have suggested PCO until a few days ago before he exploded the Digital Media Championship on a GCW show. I would be surprised if that ends up happening now. We'll get a couple returning legends and all of those sorts of things. Maybe a JBL or a Dudley Boy appearance or something like that. The one that I have a lot of curiosity about, and I didn't see who suggested this, but I do wonder, with Corey Graves going on his ranting and raving on social media, I wonder if McAfee gets in and Corey Graves eliminates him. And we find out that Corey Graves is cleared, and you have one hell of a storyline as a secondary story going into Mania with Graves against Pat McAfee. I wonder if we get something along those lines. I think that would be a little bit fun. Maybe we get like an X-Pac return or something along those lines. So I don't know if we're going to get a big, like, oh my goodness sort of a thing. Kind of on a similar pace, I guess, to what I was suggesting before with Marigold. Right now, Omos is kind of embattled in this GHC tag team title thing. And there was a controversy because he just handed the belt over to a different team. And Noah is like, no, that's not how this works. So that, it feels like that's kind of continuing here. And so because of that, I wonder if we get a Pro Wrestling Noah entrance or two in this one. And again, it's not, they are not a big enough company that's going to be like an, oh my God, sort of a thing. But I do wonder if there's just a bit of a, hey, look at us. Can't be suing us for monopolies and all these things. Look at all the promotions we're working with now, and get those guys kind of on there a little bit, because Omos now going off, and they've done some stuff before, like Shinsuke Nakamura wrestling over there. So I wonder if there's like some kind of a tie-in with them. But now down to the real nitty-gritty of this whole thing. Let's start with what I think they'll do. There are a lot of different ways you can go. The CM Punk one, it almost feels too obvious. In a match where anyone feels like they could win, it does feel like he's the one that if he wins, it's like, okay, we should have known that was coming. And because there are so many options, I just don't know if that's the one. If he is going to be the one that really does end up having that opportunity and doing the main eventing WrestleMania thing and all of that. Now, we've seen you can do it with Cody, where you can kind of go back to that well once again for a second WrestleMania season, but that might get a little bit tired after a while. But I don't think it'll be Punk to win the Royal Rumble. I think it'll be John Cena. The more I have thought about it, they made this big thing, he's going to be in the Rumble, and it's been so quiet. it's been so quiet around them. It has been like they have been trying to get us to forget that John Cena is hanging around and he's going to be it. And so what I think the story is this year is that it's going to be, like I said before, it is going to be like that year where he lost to The Rock. And he's like, I'm starting from nothing here. But this time, like, he's going to win the Rumble. I think he's going to go to WrestleMania, and I think he's going to lose. And then I think we are going to get, from April to December, this push of, look, I've said before, I don't want Ric Flair's record, even though Ric Flair definitely won more than 16 world titles. I don't want Ric Flair's record. I don't need it. I'm just coming out here. I'm going to compete. I'm going to try to do all these things. But I got so close, and now I need it. But I feel like I'm so far away now. And it builds this slow progression toward December. And can he do it? Can he finally get there? And either he does, and then he vacates the title, or whatever storytelling device you want to use with it at that point. But I just think if we want to build this up, have this whole year be really relevant and have some kind of a crescendo, because I can't believe with a John Cena retirement tour that we are going to get John Cena he did well in the Rumble, but he was one of the last 6 and he got eliminated, and he had this match at WrestleMania and like it was good, but it was like I was going to say Baron Corbin. He's not with the company anymore. It was a good match, but it's with Sheamus, and it's just kind of a whatever match. And then like he has a couple things, and maybe it's the Intercontinental title that he's going after. And then he has a match, and it's over. I just don't believe that that's going to be the case. I think this is going to be a major story point throughout the year, and I think if you want to keep it fresh and keep it with some drama throughout the year, that it starts with a win at the Royal Rumble. So that's why I think they'll do it. I think it'll be John Cena. Now, what would I do? The Cena one is interesting. And like I made the case before for a number of different guys who could win it. There's a part of me that is just like, fuck it, man. It's Jacob Fatu. He comes in at number 1. He eliminates all 29 of them. The match is half an hour long because he's just throwing each guy out one after one after one. And he wins the Royal Rumble in the, like, Shayna Baszler in the Elimination Chamber. The most dominant performance you've ever seen. And he is just killing everybody. And by the end of the night, he is the biggest superstar on the planet. There is part of me that just wants to be like, yeah, let's roll with it. Let's do it. Let's go. I don't think they're going to do that. And I wouldn't do that just yet. I think that's, obviously there was a lot of hyperbole in that. I think that is his spot next year. I think that this is going to be a year of him really establishing himself as this main event guy. And I think we go into the Royal Rumble next year with him being undeniable at that point. I think he has a great Rumble. I think he probably gets a ton of eliminations and all of that. I think we get some kind of a solo thing at heading in WrestleMania season here. And I think we build him up as this kind of unstoppable force going into next WrestleMania season. That's kind of where I think him and Braun Breaker kind of similar spots in that way. So that one is out. You can certainly tell a good one with Roman, with Punk, all of them. I did it before. I would go Rock. I would, and I know I've just done the dramatic whatever for 2 guys now, and that was too much, but I would go Rock. I think that you have so many people just thinking that feud is dead because of what he did at on Netflix and on Raw and all those different things, and hey, it's squashed. I think you can pick that up real quick. And I laid it out before, how I would do it. And I might get a few groans or whatever, but 30, they come out, it's John Cena at 30, and they're going and they're whatever, and then the clock starts ticking again. And it's, okay, what? We just had 30. There's only 30. What are we doing? And at 31, it's The Rock. And he's the CEO or the head of the board or whatever the actual position is that he is. He is the be-all, end-all and the decision maker. He's the guy who can fire referees if they don't do anything, so whatever. He gets to decide that he is the 31st entrant in the Royal Rumble, and he wins. And you set up him versus Cody. And you can tell a lot of interesting stories with what they have set up with Cody, where the burden of the championship, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? That head's getting real heavy, and all his friends are turning on him. And he's like, you know what? Like, you can see what's happening. You saw what happened to Roman with this title. You see what's happening with you. You've seen what's happened to so many guys that it's too much. Let me take that off of you. Let me do this. And then it ends up being this big thing, and we're back to the Mama Rhodes and all the bleeding and all the things like that. It's like, hey, eventually it gets into Roman couldn't get it done, I'm going to get it done. And that leads you to a Roman thing, that leads you to this, it leads you to another Cody Roman, and it kind of continues the progression of, is Cody going to turn into the Joker, basically at some point, and just have this burden be too much for him to have. I think, obviously, the way they've built it this year, there are so many different guys that if they win, it sets up years worth of stories. But I think given how last year went, and all the different stuff that you want to kind of tie together, Rock winning, I think, puts it all in place to set you up for so many different things to really, really punctuate this kind of new era and the stories that we've been telling over the last couple of years. So that's what I would do at the Royal Rumble. So let me know what you guys think, whether it's in the chat here on Twitch, twitch.tv/primetimepk, if it is in the comments on YouTube or Dailymotion, either of those spots, let me know what you guys would do. I try to reply to all of the chats and everything in the comments and all of that. Let me know what y'all would do with that particular, or with these particular matches, anything you disagree with, or on social media, Primetime Klein, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok as well, and we have a Facebook page. It is Couch Potato Diary. Just search Facebook there, search it on Facebook. So anywhere there's social media, I am on there. Let me know what you think about all of these predictions for the Royal Rumble. I know we've gone a little long on this stream today, which means we're going long on this show. This is all one podcast today. I just have to talk a little bit, and I don't like to do it, but we need to address AEW, because Dynamite was awful last night, so let's talk about it. As the WWE is building up momentum for its biggest show of the year and building towards its really biggest show of the year, as we go into WrestleMania season, AEW is trying to do the different than approach. And last night on Dynamite, their different than approach was, we're going to be bad. This was terrible. This was absolutely terrible last night from AEW Dynamite. It was a quiet crowd. It was a very cold show. It was just it was bad. There's no other way of saying it. This was a bad wrestling program. And I understand you start shit talking AEW and some people can get their hackles up a little bit. Tell me where I'm wrong. I'm willing to listen. I want AEW to be good, right? I want AEW to be the alternative and all of those things. Not just because, like, you want a good spot for other wrestlers to go. I just want there to be interesting options to watch. Like when AEW was going, when they first get started, and you got WWE, who, like, it's not great, but it's still, when WWE, even when they were bad, when it gets going good, it's still really good, right? And the matches would be incredible and all those different things, right? Like, there was a lot that you could get really excited about with WWE. And AEW, it's this new thing, and you got these crazy matches, and it's all this stuff. And New Japan is firing on all cylinders. When all of that was going, God, it's fun to watch. And right now, very little of that is happening. New Japan is trying, and AEW is trying. And honestly, like, TNA is creeping up there a little bit. Like, there's a lot of trying going on right now. Toxic saying, I feel like wrestling has been bad in 2025, or maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know. I don't think it's that, because it's weird, because WWE is at such a run right now. But that being said, to your point, SmackDown has been bad more than it's been good so far this year. I would say Dynamite has been good more than it's been bad, but I think this week really canceled all that off. And I think, like, the Netflix show, it had a pacing issue. And so from that standpoint, like, I can see where you thought that it was bad. But overall, I think Raw's been very, very good this year. And I think NXT is kind of clicking as well. We definitely need to get more NXT content on here. So I don't think wrestling this year is bad. I don't think it's been what we want it to be. And I don't think it's been where it can be. And so that is the frustrating aspect of it. But Toxic, I'm glad you're here hanging out still. I felt like Dynamite last night, and I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it yet. I felt like Dynamite last night was like our WWE 2K24 My GM streams, where either the other brands have cut it off, so like, hey, you're not allowed to use these guys this week, or like we've just had a couple of big shows and everyone's stamina's down, or there's some kind of like the commissioner note, or there is some reason why, and then we put the show together and it's like, well, That's a show. It's not a great one, but it's a show. We just need to get something out there and just keep it rolling. That's what this felt like last night from a international television brand. That's not great. I can do that on a video game because it's not my job. I mean, content creation, all that, but it's not my job to make a great wrestling show. It's their job to do that. And to put out what they put out last night was dreadful. I thought they were building up some momentum. Things were starting to fall into place. It's just not now. And they're trying to explain things, but they're explaining it in the wrong way with the wrong guys. So a couple of the things that I didn't like. The crowd was dead for basically the whole show. They got amped up for Will Ospreay, and he comes out and the crowd is going. And like I've seen the clips today with Eric Bischoff saying, well, how can Will Ospreay say he's the best wrestler in the world? He's not a draw. And on one hand, I understand that entirely. On the other hand, I don't think he's being put in the spot to... I don't think anything that's happening right now is his fault. I think that it's very much Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen right now. He is an otherworld talent that is not being put in the best spots to succeed, that it can make an appreciable difference on these shows. You could argue that if he is the best wrestler in the world, that should be enough and they should be selling more than fucking 1,000 tickets per show. But he starts the night off and the crowd is going nuts for him. And then they get beaten down, and from that point on, no one gives a shit. Everyone, I think, and again, you can say, well, if everyone's there to see Will Ospreay, more people should be there then if he is that good, and I will hear that. But I think everyone was there basically to see Will Ospreay. And then after that, no one really cared. It was really quiet for that main event with Mercedes Moné. And we've talked about it before. Mercedes is on a run right now with some great matches, but it's a bit of a cold one with Sakazaki. It's a character that pops in and out every now and then. And like, you just don't have this investment in this match. And so it's a fine match. No one cares. And it was dead. And it's not like it was a bad wrestling market. Like, I think Huntsville, Alabama has had their fair share of wrestling shows before, and the crowds have been pretty good for it. They just didn't have anything on this show to be good about. So that there was just, the crowd being dead was the big one. And like I said, you need to do some storytelling things. You can't just have Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega be awesome every week, but they do it at the beginning of the show. The crowd is there for those guys, and it's a beatdown. And so, again, you have to establish that the Callis family is what they are, and they're these dominant guys, and that's what it's going to be to create some intrigue going into their tag team match in a couple of weeks at Grand Slam. But it just felt like these are your two most over guys right now, and you beat them down, they don't get anything back, and so the crowd doesn't really get anything to get all that excited about. And like I said, it just felt like it was the air coming out of the balloon with that one. Then, as we go on, and if you've watched my stuff the last couple of weeks, you know where I'm going. And it was all over X, and it was all over anywhere anyone was talking about this show. How in the blue hell does Claudio need interference to beat Jeff Jarrett? And we said, you better not beat Claudio with Jeff Jarrett. Don't do it. And this is the problem with this story is, you know what? Jeff Jarrett was great friends with Owen. All right, let's have a good run in the Owen Hart Cup. All right, let's get behind him. Really with this guy. All right, he's an underdog. He's old. He's been around for a long time. We can get behind this guy. Let's go, Jeff Jarrett. And he's pushing forward, and he's getting these chances. He's coming out, and he's defending people, and he's getting into Hangman Page's face. We're like, all right, that's our guy, Jeff Jarrett. And then he comes out and he says, I won a world title in 2025. And we're like, okay, you know what? It's good to have goals. So give it one more run there, that last outlaw. And then he says, I was MJF before MJF, and I did it better. It's like, well, I mean, the King of the Mountain gimmick in TNA was kind of shitty, and the Chosen One in WCW was part of the creative that sent that show into a death spiral. But okay, you talked well, I guess. Pretty good character. And so I'm gonna face Claudio for a chance at the world title. It's like, well, I don't want you to beat him. I guess, but maybe you could. Well, no, I don't want him to beat MJF. I don't want him to beat anyone. Hey, what are we doing here? And so you just on the surface, Jeff Jarrett going for one last run is a fun little like, yeah, okay, cool. But then you put it in to any part of the show, and I don't want him to win. I don't want him to beat Claudio. I don't want him to beat MJF. I don't want him to get his comeuppance on anything. I kind of just like, I don't know what you do with him. And so they've talked it in, and one thing I noticed on commentary this week is that Excalibur said Jeff Jarrett wants one more, wants to finish his career, and the one thing that'll get it is the AEW World or a World Championship to finish that off. And I was like, oh, that was a slip on, not on purpose, but that was a slip that I think was telling. I think that they're building this like AEW whatever. I kind of think that their plan now is to pivot. And I think this world title run that Jeff Jarrett's going to go on, I kind of think it might be over there for the Ring of Honor one. It was a weird stumble from Excalibur, whereas the AEW champion, well, a world championship. It's like, I think there was something with that one. So maybe it's me reading too much into it, but the Jeff Jarrett story, I have always kind of liked Jeff Jarrett. I always thought he got maybe a bit too much flack for some things that were kind of out of his control and all of that. But I also don't want him in my world title picture in 2025 when you have all this amazing talent on the show. And Claudio, it shouldn't take all that interference to beat Jeff Jarrett or anything like that. Like that. I think you could honestly have told that story the same way if Claudio went out and beat the piss out of him, and Jeff Jarrett's like, man, maybe I don't have it. And you get this inspirational buildup of whatever. I don't think that if you're going to do this, it should almost be like a guy got hot at the right time, and look at that, he has this opportunity, and he just happened to win the right things. Not, Jeff Jarrett is capable of beating anyone on this roster, and that thus he is the world champion. That shouldn't be how it should be done here with a 57-year-old on your television screen. Although, that would make him only a little bit older than some of the guys who are in the main event picture. And again, we get Moxley promo, and they're saying, why haven't we seen the title in a while? And it's like, the world title isn't here, it's forged in combat, and it's all these different things. And I love this Moxley character. I do. And I know that's not a thing that a lot of people are saying right now. I do really like the idea of Moxley leading this, like I said, like he is, and the comparisons you can make, like it's the obvious muscle enhancing shirts, but the kind of like not turtleneck, but just long sleeves or whatever, and all of that, and the almost bordering on army gear, and just kind of running everything amok and all of that. It kind of feels like, and I don't mind if they try this, like Bane and all of his guys trying to take over Gotham. And you don't know when they're going to attack. You don't know from where and all of that. And I think you kind of got that image early on when they're attacking Darby Allin and they're attacking Jay White, and it's all these different things and it's all this different stuff. And that, okay, fine. We're fighting for the heart of AEW. Cool. You got the title. And it stayed there. It has stayed there. Nothing has progressed with this thing. And now they're trying to make excuses for why. You don't need to see the title. The title isn't here. It's in my soul. It's like, well, I feel like this thing that is supposed to be the emblem of AEW, if you want to not put it on TV, I think there's a way you can do it where you tell the story that I hate what AEW has turned into, and so people don't get to see that symbol of AEW excellence until this company is, in my vision, until this company is in the way that I think that it should be. And you don't get to see that because that should represent excellence. That should represent greatness that is forged in combat, in professional wrestling, what AEW is supposed to be. And these performers don't have the right to have that symbol of excellence be shown on a night in, night out basis. They have to get better and earn their opportunity to even see the fucking thing before they get a chance at it. I think there's a way you could do that instead of just like, yeah, I don't fucking feel like it, man. Piss off. And then, as we've said for weeks, Copeland being the one to come out and try to run these guys off. Again, there's a story you can tell. He's cut heartfelt promo after heartfelt promo about why AEW is so important. We need another one of those. We need to know why at this time that guy is fighting for the heart of AEW. Instead, it just feels like a regular championship feud. And so instead of it feeling like this real battle for AEW's soul, you just got a bunch of guys who are interfering in every goddamn match and winning a whole lot and beating everyone down week after week after week. And the guy who's going for the title is just like, yeah, I want the title. So if you could stop beating everyone up, that'd be nice. But ultimately, I just want the championship. Like, it takes it a step down, and so it's felt like we haven't had any progression for months now, because that's the direction that they have gone with this match, and it just has grinded everything down to a halt. And so instead of it feeling like there is this kind of, like, like the villains are attacking Gotham and now they've taken over the courthouse and Batman is walking out on thin ice to see if he can still live and all those things, it's just, yeah, the bad guys won again. Well, the good guys coming to save him? I mean, kinda. Like, the good guys, like, they want the bad guys to not exist anymore, but that's just because they're blocking their way to the grocery store instead of saving the heart of Gotham. Like, it's a wrestling story, but it's not a great one, and it doesn't tie in with everything that is happening right now. And so that is why it just gets so frustrating and just feels like it is such a stale product right now. And I understand the reasoning behind it, kind of, is that you are waiting for Ospreay and Omega to be built up to be able to take it at like an all-in or something along those lines, right? But this is one of the things we've talked about before with WWE. And I mean, their storytelling is miles beyond anything in AEW right now. But with WWE, they fell into the trap a little bit where, okay, this is big, so it has to happen at WrestleMania. So, all right, this guy's going to get his big win at WrestleMania, and now this title's going to change at WrestleMania. And this guy's on a good run. We can't take it off of him until WrestleMania. And so every show leading up to it, while entertaining, it feels like it is second rate because nothing big is going to happen. And so we're just in this holding pattern where no one thinks Edge is going to beat Copeland is going to beat Moxley for the AEW championship. And so we're just getting a title feud to have a title feud that isn't going to advance anything anywhere, to wait for the good guys to get past this one thing before they can get to this other thing. And I am not doubting that Ospreay or Omega or both against Moxley in the main event of All in front of 8,000 people in a stadium that can hold 60 isn't going to be an amazing match. But it just feels like to get there, we are sacrificing week after week after week and character after character after character. You're telling me that Jay White can't even get anything over on Wheeler Yuta to the point where he's getting beaten down. Like, Wheeler Yuta, I understand you want to keep everyone in this strong and everyone in this whatever. Someone should be able to hit a finisher on these guys at some point. But every week, it's just these guys getting beaten down. And I get that that is kind of what everyone thought the NWO thing really was about. And, oh, well, they just got these cool heels and now they turned into baby faces. Well, people were actually invested in those stories. And then we got invested in a Sting to really get into it. We're not, like, we, the viewer, are assuming that Ospreay and Omega are going to be those guys, but they're not fighting for that right now. They're not telling us that. So we don't have anything to latch onto. We're just watching these characters that we're not invested in, that we don't like, that we're kind of sick of, which is fucking insane because they're some of the best performers in the world in Pac, in Claudio, in Moxley. Marina Shafir, she hasn't performed in a while, and I wouldn't put her on that caliber, but vibes-wise, elite, phenomenal. Perfect fit for this. Just standing in the background, being huge and terrifying, working to perfection. And Wheeler Yuta's there. And they, like, you have all these great performers, and I don't care about them at all. I groan when they come on my television. That is not where this should be. They are trying to be the NWO, and they're turning into the House of Torture in the worst ways possible. And it just sucks the life out of this television show in just awful ways. But Swerve and Ricochet was good. So you had that. It's just, it's bad right now. And this show was so terrible. And it was dead. And it was so predictable. And nothing about it was entertaining or whatever. It didn't even feel like a placeholder. It felt like Rampage. You know, like it just felt like, here are some matches. We're going to pretend there's some storyline advancement. And we're going to go on that way. So here, I ran through AEW and what I don't like. I know AEW fans can get a little mad. Rightfully so sometimes. I think it's a little much. Like I said, I think a lot of the Eric Bischoff stuff has gone a little overboard, and he is just in that fight now and can't really see a lot of the forest for the trees. There's a lot of stuff that I think he's right about, but I do think some of that gets a little excessive. And so I do want to, let's end on a positives. The Tony Storm turn I think was excellent. And a lot of people are criticizing it being unannounced on Collision. I do think that you have to make Collision at least a little bit must-see. Have at least a little bit of stuff on there that's of impact. That you can, like, okay, maybe I do need to tune into this thing on a Saturday night now that college football season is done and NFL season, there's no more Saturdays there. Maybe that's something we need to start to pay attention to. And so I do think you need to have more impactful stories that happen over there instead of just Deonna Purrazzo and Taya Valkyrie coming on and saying, well, I think we should be in the TBS match, not Uka Sakazaki. And anyone who doesn't watch Collision, which is most people, are like, why? Anyway, I've now gone negative again. The Tony Storm stuff is fantastic. And that turn, I thought it was such a great way to do that. And even if there's a couple of cheesy things about it, I think it was excellent. Will Ospreay is a very talented performer, and it's awesome that we get to see him every week. And the Swerve Ricochet stuff is very well thought out, and everyone's motivations are very clear and obvious, and it fits their characters perfectly. So those are the good things. The bad stuff is just everything else with AEW. That is going to do it for another week here on Couch Potato Diary. Thank you all so much. If you hung around for the live stream this whole time, bless you. Thank you so much. Like I said before, this has been an unbelievable run here on Couch Potato Diary. As we're wrapping up January, podcast-wise, there's a good chance that this becomes like one of the top months I've ever had with this show, and we're coming up on 4 years now. YouTube-wise, it ain't close. This is definitely one of the best months that we have had. So thank you, everyone who has been tuning in. I am open to suggestions, by the way. If there's something you like and want more of, let's roll with it. If there's something you don't like and want less of, at least I'll hear you out, and we'll roll with it that way. The Twitch stuff, admittedly, that's slowed a little bit, and so I wanted to get that up and running, and I understand I need to treat it a bit more professionally. But Toxic saying congrats in the chat, man. Toxic, the support has been unbelievable, and I am so appreciative of you popping on every time here and hanging out. So thank you to you for helping kind of get this thing rolling a little bit, and for just being around, man. I really do appreciate that. Coming up here in the next little bit, obviously there's a lot of stuff coming on this weekend that we have talked about at length. As I've said before, it's a big weekend in this household, so I would not be expecting a whole lot of live reaction stuff coming up. Check out the YouTube page. It is, just search Couch Potato Diary. I'll put the link in the chat here for those of you who are watching live. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you've already figured it out. And if you're listening in podcast form, I put up all the links in the show description for all the places you could find me. But we're going to have a lot of reactions up on YouTube. Also, Monday, it is my wife's birthday proper, so we're not going to have a show on that day, a live stream anyway that day. So I'm hoping that at some point I'll have carved out some time to have watched this stuff and put out some reaction things. Also, it's the start of the Super Bowl week, so we will have some content out. It's just the live part of it won't necessarily be there for you guys with that for the next couple of days. So the next live stream will be coming at you on Tuesday as we get ready for the Super Bowl. And Tuesdays are double stream days, so we are going to be doing a lot of times, like I said, we do the Tuesday pod and the Wednesday pod. We're not doing that this week. Also, this outro is getting way too long, but we're not going to do the 2-pod thing this week because it's Super Bowl week. My plan is to go live every day. Friday, that still might be a bit tough, but we're still going to try to do it, to get live every day leading up to Super Bowl 59 with the Chiefs and the Eagles. So the next time I can guarantee you a live stream is coming is this upcoming Tuesday. We'll know, we'll be getting ready for the Super Bowl. We'll know about the Royal Rumble. We'll have the Raw after the Royal Rumble to get us ready for a few things as well. We'll know what Benavidez did. We'll know about Izzy and all them. Plus, it's a UFC fight week as well, so it never stops here on Couch Potato Diary and on Primetime PK. Thank you guys so much. We're presented by Sea of Dead. Check out the gear at seaofdead403.ca. Really proud of all the designs we have up at the shop right now, and a lot more fun ones are coming. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day and your weekend, and I'll talk to you all later.